Lovely to see you all here. So, good evening, everybody. My name is Tania Farrelly, and on behalf of Geelong Regional Library Corporation, I am absolutely delighted to welcome you to tonight's event with the one and only Tricia Stringer, who has written multiple books. I'm already going off-piste here, so just forgive me. But she's multiple books, award-winning author, and we're here to talk today about her most recent book, Baby, Keeping Up Appearances. So I would like to start, of course, by acknowledging the Wadawurrung people and the Eastern Maar original owners of the lands on which our library services operate. We pay respect to Wadawurrung and Eastern Maar elders past, present and emerging, and we acknowledge and celebrate First Nations peoples of the land as custodians of learning, literacy, knowledge and, of course, story. I'm very pleased, stoked, to have been invited to facilitate this evening's event with Tricia as someone that's an inspirational author and a great storyteller. How many books, Tricia?
15 now.
So 15. So 15 books over how many years?
Well, let's say 12.
12 years. So prolific. I'm jealous. So among her books include commercial fiction titles Birds of a Feather, The Family Inheritance, Table for Eight, The Model Wife. She's got rural romances, Come Rain or Shine, Something in the Wine, historical sagas, Dust on the Horizon, Jewel in the North. Is there nothing you can do? You can't do. So Tricia's latest book, Keeping Up Appearances, is a delightful novel, and I can attest to that, full of practical wisdom and dry humour that examines female friendship, buried secrets, and why honesty is usually the best policy. So please join me, everyone, in welcoming Tricia. So the first thing I want to do is give you all a good look of this beautiful book and the beautiful cover. And it struck me as I was reading the book just how relevant this book is and the themes in this book are for today. I mean, keeping up appearances really does relate to things that we all struggle with. I don't think you'd be human if you didn't think at some point in your life, oh, I wonder what they're thinking about me. I hope they like me, or, you know, I wonder what they think of my mum or dad or my kids or anything like that. In this day and age, in this sort of social climate that we live in, with so much more openness, it's very, very relevant, pertinent that a book like Keeping Up Appearances with themes that are held within is out. So I just wanted to talk quickly about the fact that being so pertinent and the theme being so relevant about the desire to keep up appearances, I wondered what came first, Tricia. Was it the characters or was it the theme of keeping up appearances?
Definitely in this case the theme came first. I don't know if you've ever thought about perhaps something that you've done in your childhood that you think, oh wow, I'm glad nobody ever found out about that, or, you know, it's good no one knew that that happened. And so I was pondering that one day. I was thinking about a time when, in my young teens, when my girlfriend and I wrote a letter, and thank goodness we didn't have the social media that we have now and would have just pressed send. So we wrote this letter and it wasn't terribly flattering for the intended recipient. And my girlfriend's mother got wind of this letter, and now as a mother myself, I just think how clever she was. She didn't say, don't send that letter. She sat us down for a chat. And by the end of that chat, our consciences had been pricked, and of course we didn't send the letter. But it just made me think, what might happen if someone in their 60-somethings had and it had and it had the power to perhaps hurt people that she cared for very much. So that was the premise that got me thinking of keeping up appearances.
So it was your own guilty little past.
Yes, my own guilty little
that
past.
got us in. I could relate to it definitely, and we'll get to that in a moment. So, just really interested too in the cover. So, how did you come up with the cover, and tell me a bit about this town hall?
I don't get any say in the cover. It comes to me as a nearly completed thing, and so the people who are very good at it, my publisher and the people I call design fairies, but the design team come up with this, and they have a brief. They come up with a cover, and if it's something like this that has virtually an image on it, they then go and look for a stock image online and find that and then twiddle with it. So you can see that there's beautiful old hall. The doors are open and showing you the food on the table. They're welcoming you to the Back to Badara or Celebrate Badara celebration. And then over in the corner you can see that there's a time capsule marker and a garden, and someone's been digging. So this cover really has all the elements of the story, and so in my excitement, once it's finished, of course, and all of you who are authors know, first thing we want to do when they say, yes, the cover is ready, we want to put it on social media to share with everyone. And so I did that, and immediately I started getting messages from people to say that hall looks like our local hall. And I went, so I went off and found out more and, asked where they were, and they were in Newstead in Victoria, near Castlemaine, and that is the Newstead Hall. So that's the old Mechanics Institute, which still stands, and the community have built a newer hall off to the side, which is the roof running off to the side. So it actually is a real hall, and I'm going to Newstead tomorrow. I'm very excited about that.
That is very lovely.
To visit that hall, yeah.
That's life imitating art in a way,
Indeed.
Isn't it?
Yes.
That's a beautiful story. So you've written 15 books, and I'm just intrigued to know how on earth you can keep coming up with new ideas. Like, how can you keep sparking different things? Are you thinking about your own life? Are you thinking about your friends or social issues? How does it come to you?
It can be anything. It can be, something I've read in a magazine, somewhere I've been, something I've seen, something that's happened to someone. And I think of it, then that thing or that thing that's happened or that thing that I've read as like an iceberg, and a little bit splinters off and floats away, and that bit that splinters off and floats away is the idea that I take to create the story. So I'm never writing the story as it actually happened, but it's like me, writing that letter with my girlfriend all those years ago. The story is nothing like that, but it was the little spark from that, or the splinter from that helped me come up with the story. And so there are stories all around us. It's now.
Yeah, I think the choice. Yeah,
yes,
how do you make the choice? We'll get to what's up your sleeve next. So I just want to talk a little bit about the book, and there's 3 key characters, female protagonists in the book. One of them is a young woman called Paige, who, I'm not going to steal your thunder, but who's running away from something. One of them's Bryony, who feels her life is falling apart because of the decisions that some of her children are making. And one of them is Marion, who I could relate to, who is the best secret keeper of all. And she's the one that buries the time capsule that's on the front cover. So if you think back to when you were a teenager too, and the things you got up to and the things that you probably wrote in your diary, it's quite a harrowing thought to think that someone might be digging it up 50 years later or whatever. So when it comes to characters like that, quite deep, intricate characters and their backstories, what inspiration are you drawing on?
I find them, once again, all around me, and I never really know until So I saw Marion quite early on in this story. So once I had the idea for the story, Marion appeared, and she just... who's, worked hard all her life. She's helped on the farm that she lives on with her husband, raised 2 children, and community, and wants that to continue. So she's quite an interesting woman, and I really enjoyed her and getting to know her. And before I even start the story, what I do is I have a journal, and the have a page, and so I write all the things that I think about, like, who are her friends, who does she, where does she work, religious or not religious, what's her... So I get to know that character first, and I do that with...
Yes. Oh, we love that, don't we?
Yeah.
Marion's come to join us.
Yes, she must...
Got it.
There we are.
There we go. Just need to get the AV off. We'll be right.
All
Thank
good.
you.
Yes, so I spend the time with especially the main characters, trying to get to know them first before I start writing the story.
How long would that take then, generally?
I've been thinking of them probably over a period of months.
Yeah.
Not necessarily all day, every day, but they're just there in the back of my
Yeah.
head. I carry them around with me, and then occasionally I jot things down so that I feel like I know them when I'm starting. But they've always got secrets, and Marion did have a secret, but I had no idea that she had that secret when I was...
So
no
you
idea.
didn't...
It was a surprise to me too when you find out.
Okay.
Waving my hands. Yes, so sometimes as a writer, I write organically, I guess you could say. I don't plot my stories. I have a pretty good idea of what the story is going to be, and strangely enough, my publisher actually wants a synopsis before I start. I can't understand why she wants to know what the story is going to be before I start.
Yeah.
But that synopsis doesn't usually... It has similarities to the story, but you can't hold me to it. It's never quite the same.
Okay.
And that's because the characters drive the story.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So do you keep a book for each character, or is it all in one journal?
No, it's all in one journal.
All in one journal. And do you sometimes have to pull characters out of books and put them in another journal for a different book or anything like that?
Not usually, no.
Oh,
no.
God, you're so disciplined. Oh, my God. I might take you home with me. So has there been any characters that you have taken inspiration from actually real people?
No, not as such. So what I think, and sometimes they say to me, oh, gee, you're... Because we all have, there are characteristics that are similar in people, or, you can find them around you. So you might see that characteristic in one of my characters and think, well, I know someone like that. But it doesn't mean I've copied that person. You know, when I was writing rural romance, my very first book, I think people, I had a number of young women say, you've written about my mother-in-law, and I don't even know your mother-in-law. But it was obviously something in the character that I had written that they recognised in their mother-in-law. Yeah. So I think that's it. I mean, we all have similarities. We have differences, but we have similarities in some ways. So... there might be just something there that catches somebody. Yeah. And that's often a spark for a character. I might hear someone say a word in a particular way, or a way that they walk, or something that they eat, and that might make me think of a character. But once again, I'm not copying that person, it's just a part.
Yeah, that's really interesting and quite disciplined of you to be able to compartmentalise your stories and keep the characters in one story and not sort of transfer anything into the next. Because I would imagine it'd be quite easy to go to pick one up and put one over here, or...
I guess it, maybe there is some overlap at times, I don't know, but I think it's like real people, whilst they have similarities, no one is ever exactly the same. So I guess there's those
Yeah,
differences.
I think that what I really loved about the novel too is just picking up on little human truths, about how bringing someone food actually starts to cut down walls between people and to create bonds and things like that. I particularly like the stories about the sausage rolls.
Oh, yes, Marion and her sausage rolls.
Yeah,
yes.
so do you actually have a sausage roll recipe? Or?
I do. So sausage rolls, food features in a few of my books, and in this case, Marion uses she's the queen of sausage rolls, so she uses those sausage rolls to welcome new people to the district or to visit a friend who might need a pick-me-up, or, she's even been known to bribe people with her sausage rolls. And so makes lots of sausage rolls in the story that they're there. And so my daughter came up with a great idea. She's a great cook. And she said, Mum, we should have sausage rolls at the launch at home. And so we set about making batches and batches of sausage rolls. Well, then, of course, you think, well, I better get the recipe right. I mean, you know what cooking's like, you just sort of do it. And I needed two sorts because Marion makes sausage rolls, mince sausage rolls, and she makes chicken.
Yeah.
So my daughter has a great sausage roll recipe with a little secret ingredient, and my son has a great chicken, or one of my boys has a great chicken sausage roll recipe. So we used those and we practiced, and then we thought, well, we'll get them printed so, people can have a sausage roll recipe to take away.
And can we find that sausage roll recipe online?
Not
anywhere?
yet, no.
Not yet. Maybe you publish it in a sausage roll book.
Yeah, maybe my newsletter, we'll put it in there. Yeah.
Very good. And so if you had to pick someone to play your key protagonist characters, have you got anyone in mind if it became a movie or something like that?
Oh gosh, I think to be Marion, you'd have to be someone like Judy Davis, very...
Okay, yeah.
And then Bryony is also quite strong, but she can be a bit fluffy at times. I wonder if Rachel Griffiths might be able to pull her off.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And Paige, I quite like Sarah Snook. I think she's quite a... Yeah, I think she'd be good as Paige, maybe.
All right, well, we'll put that to Hollywood then, shall we?
Yep, that'd be great. They have to be Australian. I can't
have to be Australian, of course. So just, I'm quite interested in your genesis as a writer and how you got started and how you took the leap, I suppose, into writing and how that sort of evolved for you over the years.
Yes, so I haven't always wanted to be a writer. I was a teacher, a librarian, and our family moved from Eyre Peninsula, which is that big V peninsula in South Australia, over to York Peninsula, which is the leg-shaped one. We call it the leg that holds up Australia in our part of the world.
That's a good way of remembering it, because I never remember that.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So York Peninsula, and we live on the knee of that leg. So there's 3 towns there, Kadina and Moonta and Wallaroo, where I live, and that forms the Copper Coast, because back in the early days of settlement it was a huge copper mining area. And so when we moved there, we experienced our first Cornish festival. We have this huge festival every 2 years. Don't know if anyone's ever... So we have that, and I experienced that and realised that I was teaching a Year 4-5 class at the time, and there wasn't anything for them to read that kind of related to that story, and the whole reason would be to write a story. And that's when I realised it's not quite so easy to write a story. So I eventually did a children's writing course because I really wanted to finish that story. I started it, but I just, let it fade away. So that's how I started writing.
Okay.
I did have a couple of books published by a small publisher, but they didn't last very long. So those books are still used in my local community for local history, which is
lovely.
great. So I get to visit the local schools every now and again and pop in and have a chat about local history and writing. And then while all that was happening, if you're a writer, you don't ever hang around waiting for publishers because they take forever. So you keep writing. And so I had seen a short story competition And this is back in probably the early 2000s. I'd seen a short story competition for an adult story with a rural theme, and I had been mulling this idea of a city girl who married a farmer and, you know, what life on the farm was like for her. And so I started writing this story and, you know, I got carried away and I got to 30,000 words and I thought, you know, I better check the competition details, and of course it was a 3,000 word limit, so I'm not a short story writer. And so I kept going, finished that, and, you know, half-heartedly I suppose tried to get publication, but I ended up self-publishing that book and 2 more. And then by the time I was writing the 4th book, I realised that there was this genre called rural romance, and that's where my books fitted. And, you know, publishers, librarians, booksellers like to have a tag, a place where your book fits. So if you can pitch it to that, you've got more chance. And I had the opportunity to pitch to Harlequin Australia, who were looking for Australian stories by Australian writers at that time. And so that's how that first book came to be with them, and then we've gone on from there.
That's brilliant. And so can you describe the pitching process to us? What was that like? Were you nervous, or was it like...
Well, I didn't pitch face to face, so it was purely I had to send my synopsis, and you know I'm not good at those. Synopsis, the first 3 chapters had to go in, and I had a reference from a bookseller who had a good reputation. And so that went in, and they were gone for months and months and months. And then I got an email.
Oh, you got an email?
I got an email that said, after much consideration, Harlequin Australia, and I just sort of dropped off at that point because I've had a lot of rejection letters and I know how they go, thanks but no thanks. And it finished off with, we want to publish your story. And I did my little...
Did you celebrate?
Happy dance by myself at home. I was at the time with the cat. So
nice.
I don't know where my husband was. He was probably at work. But yeah, we did celebrate.
Oh,
it was
well
very
done.
special.
That's lovely. And your kids would have been excited too.
Yes.
They would have seen you working hard on that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And any writers in the room? I know there's a few. Hands up, any writers or aspiring writers?
A few of you here.
Yeah. It's just interesting from a procedural point of view, how people get started and how things evolve. And that's really my kind of next question is, how do you think your writing or your storytelling has evolved from your very first rural romance to now?
Certainly changed. If I could write I've written rural romance, I've written historical saga, and now loosely called general women's fiction or general fiction. If I could write all 3, I still would, because I really like all 3 genres. It's a time factor, and so I can only do 1 book a year, so I have to work out which book that's going to be. And when I changed to the genre I'm in now, I'd been on a cruise and I had come up with this idea, but when I got back and I talked to my publisher about it, of course I said it doesn't fit, it's not rural romance. And she said, but I like it, so let's give it a go. And so that became Table for 8, which was quite a change. It took a lot of extra work to get that how it was in the end. But I learnt a lot in the process, and I really enjoy that bit, going a bit more depth perhaps into characters, exploring themes that affect people in my age bracket, because that's what I like to read. And I also found, I was reading some that were a bit doom and gloom. Everybody's dying, or they've got some condition, or they've, I'm thinking, well, I know, but we also have so much life left in us and so many things still to do. So I wanted to write stories in a way like a rural romance that leave people with a happy for now ending. So, okay, no one's going to live forever, but, we're happy for now. So that's...
Well, and I think that's the other thing that people forget, in terms of the ageing process, is you get to sort of 50, 55, and the reality is the kids are off their hands, hopefully, you know, your mortgage is down and things are not too bad, and it's actually time to rediscover things that you might have done as a younger person. And I really like the idea of your exercise classes in keeping up appearances. So do you partake of the exercise class? Because you seem quite knowledgeable about keeping your core zipped, I noticed.
Indeed. That was another little splinter. So besides the idea of, you know, something from your past coming back, I have over the years attended various exercise classes, but I now go to my local sport and leisure centre, and I guess, you know, some of you here will probably be the same, and partake in classes for the over 55s, where, you know, active adults or strength plus, those sorts of classes, and, you know, we're all about keeping ourselves fitter, and I'm just in awe of a lot of the people that go that are way older than me and, you know, moving probably even better than I am, you know, and I just think it's a good reason to keep going. And so I thought also there's more to it than that though. There's you know, you're at the class and someone's missing. Where's Mary today? You know, like, she's not here. Well, we better find out where she is. Or let's all go for a coffee after. Or, you know, have you got time for lunch? You know, that. So I think, and it doesn't have to be a fitness class. It can be anything you belong to, but it's that camaraderie, isn't it, that is important. And so I built on that. But then when I'd written the story and I had slipped in a few exercises and a bit of music that goes with it, I thought, oh, you know, what if I've got somebody's leg going in the wrong direction, or, you know, an arm going in a way it can't possibly go? So I thought, you know, who can I get to read this? And we have a local gym coordinator who I know is also an avid reader, because we've ended up with lots of conversations about books. Yeah. So I asked her if she would read an early draft. Yeah. And, you know, she sent it back to me and she said, oh, you know, like, she praised me, which was lovely, and she said, I'm just so glad that you paid attention in class, you know, you've got it all right. Well, little did she know that in my gym bag is a notepad and a pen. So everybody else is having a swig of water, I'm back at going, you know, like, we did this exercise and we had that music and we...
So that's your secret. So
yes.
You're noting everything down all the time, not
Indeed.
just when you're thinking about your characters.
Yes. Hello? Oh, yes.
Oh, that's
working.
much better. That's
much better.
Yes, well, it smacked of authenticity to me. I felt like you were telling me to zip my core. And so awesome work. You can probably get a job as well if you need one to take gym classes, swinging legs around. So I'm just interested too, who do you like to read? Who's your great love as an author?
Oh, I read all sorts of things. I read whatever is here, and I'm excited to see Fiona Lowe's here tonight because I like Fiona's books. But I also, you know, if I talk about what I've just read, I've just finished Archie Roach's biography, which I found, you know, very moving and a very interesting story. I don't always read biography. I quite often have them as an audio in the car. Yeah. But I'm glad I read his because it had lots of photos in it, and it was really good to see the photos that went with the story. Marion Keyes, I've just read her latest, so, you know, a little bit of Irish humour and so on.
Lovely.
And I've just picked up Jane Harper's latest book, The Exiles.
The Exiles,
You know, I like pretty much anything except for horror. I'm not really a horror fan.
No
but
horror?
No.
Crime? You're
crime,
into crime?
I like crime, as long as it's not too gruesome.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
and
like
what about as a kid? You know, so I always think childhood influences are so strong and what you're seeded with. I mean, as a teacher and a librarian, you'd probably know this. Was there anything that you loved to read as a kid that you feel may not influence you now, but you sort of go back to or you really admire?
Probably don't go back to so much except with children, but I've certainly, because I've been a teacher, I reread a lot of those stories. So my very first, my mother was a fabulous reader, so there were always books in our house, but Peter Rabbit was my very first book. I remember having my copy and it just lived with me. It went everywhere I went. And Dr. Seuss, you know, all of those sorts of stories. And then Mum was also volunteer at the local institute library, so I would sometimes go with her into the library and get, moved through all of the younger children's books, which I look back and I think there are lots of American and English books. There weren't a lot of Australian stories. So when I found them, Colin Tearley and Ivan Southall and people like that, I loved them. And why did I love them? Because they were Australian. I'm sure that was that link. And then I moved through, lots of adult, all sorts of, I can remember reading Sydney Sheldon, Agatha Christie, Jean Plady, working my way around the shelves, reading them all. So I read lots of different things. I don't think I tend to go back. I did like, one of my favourite books was Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. And I bought myself a copy a couple of years back and reread it and I went, oh.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, the theme is...
The themes,
quite. Yeah, when you look at it, in the modern day, that sort of...
Well, there is a bit of sticker shock with a lot of those old books.
Yes,
and
the writing is fabulous,
divine.
but it's just the theme. I thought, probably didn't love it quite so much now, but
no, social change, isn't it?
Social change,
it is,
yeah.
I mean, in a way,
That's
it's its own time capsule, isn't it?
It is.
So you're sort of capturing the essence of some of the old writers, the Roosevelts and Whartons and things like that. I'm talking American now, but very much time capsule, very steeped in tradition, and it's nice to be able to reflect on that, particularly with something like what you've just written, because that really does show the changes in attitude and how far we've come. So, that's awesome. So I am also interested in if you could change, I'm sort of interested in who you covet as a writer. So if you could change places with someone, a writer, for a day, who would that be?
There are so many. But then I think are writers like me quite boring, sitting at home all day, like we just write. We don't do anything very exciting. But I reckon if I could swap offices with someone, maybe it would be someone like Tony Park, who spends a lot of time in Africa writing, and I think that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe that would be my
That's
swap
your dream.
if I could be.
Would you ever do something like that, do you think? Would you ever...
Swap with Tony Park?
Well, like become,
I do write in other places.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could step into someone else's shoes because everybody writes differently, but for instance, the story of Table for Eight came from the cruise.
Yeah.
And when I went on my first cruise, I just was gobsmacked. The cruise was lovely, but I was just like, this is fantastic. There are so many stories here. And how am I going to do this, So I remember we disembarked one day on the beautiful island of Lifu, and there was some lovely local ladies there who had a little market going, and they had some handcrafted books, and I bought a book from them and sat down on the beach and started jotting. So that's about as exotic probably as I've got.
As you've got, but you never know.
You never know.
You might go wild. Literally.
I might go wild.
So in terms of sort of aspiring writers or people that are learning to write or get out there, what sort of information or little tips or tricks could you pass on to them?
I think if you want to be a writer, you need to practice and you need to do it. It's like anything you want to get better at. You need to do it regularly. And someone, a well-known writer, Fiona McIntosh, said that to me one day when I was procrastinating, which I'm really good at, with that book that became my first book with Harlequin, and we'd caught up for coffee one day, and she said, how's your book going? And I've got the family, I've got work, I've got da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and she just said, stop. Do you want to be a writer or not? And I said, well, yes, I do. And she said, well, then you just write a bit every day. It doesn't matter if it's not a huge amount, and it doesn't matter if it's not fantastic, but you keep writing. You write and write and write, and in the end, you'll have that first draft, and then you can work on the first draft. And she's so right. It's that discipline of, even on the days when you don't feel like it, you have to sit down. And that first draft is work. There is no other way to describe it because it's raw. You don't know what's coming, and so you just have to sit down and write it. And then, so that would be my first thing. If you're really serious about wanting to be a writer, then you need to write regularly.
Yeah.
And I think also know your audience is another interesting thing. Why are you writing?
Yeah.
Some people are writing their family history because they want to share it with their family, and that's a very valid reason to write. And it's fine. If you're wanting to write the great Australian novel, then that's a valid reason too. And but it's all about doing it regularly and keeping on writing, I think, is probably the main thing.
And have you ever had to, this is for my own personal curiosity, so tune out if you're not interested, but have you ever had to take on board some critique that you perhaps didn't feel that, not necessarily uncomfortable with, but didn't understand? Or, and we talked just before about sensitivities in this novel, which, addresses some fairly hearty issues. Beneath all the wit and the wisdom, there are some really quite sensitive issues that Tricia's covered. So do you want to talk about, dealing with sensitivities and getting feedback from publishers to try and improve your own writing or
Sure.
the novel?
So, well, it happens probably with each of my novels, but this one, as you say, because there are sensitive topics, you don't want people to be hurt by things that you write. And so I love the editing process. To me, the hard part is getting that first draft done, and then I tweak it, obviously, and I rewrite and etc. before it goes to my publisher, and she reads it before it goes to the editor. But then when we get to the editing part, I love it because here's another person that's really interested in my story like I am. Like the family will only listen to so much about a book, and so we can have this great conversation. And I think by having that conversation, it teases things out. But every now and again, it's not usually a face-to-face conversation. So I'm reading notes in the margin of my book. And so what it's like with anything that's written, sometimes the reader gets the wrong end of the stick of what is meant by the person who's writing. So yes, so then I've gone, well, what exactly do you mean? And it has made me rethink things and dig a bit deeper. So yeah, we're probably not to totally change anything, but just to think about how the characters are doing something and how readers might react to that thing.
And have you ever said, absolutely not, I'm not going to change what you're suggesting? Or
Yes. In my first novel, the lovely editor was a young man who lived in Victoria, which is fine, absolutely fine. But here in Victoria, when you have little ones starting school, you call it preschool, don't you? In South Australia, we call it kindergarten.
Oh, yeah.
And I had written kindergarten, and he wanted to change it to preschool. I said, no, this character is living in South Australia, and so it's kindergarten. So dug my heels in.
To that South Australian point, as an ex-South Australian girl, I particularly like the reference to Never Tear Us Apart in Port Adelaide, so thank you for that one.
That was for my son. Every family has a black sheep, don't they? So, he's a Port Adelaide fan, and it actually is a good song to start up to because it starts slowly and then it builds. So it's a really good one to start a fitness class. Yeah. But so I put it in for him,
Well, I enjoyed it, particularly highlighted it.
I've actually, got a Spotify playlist. So if anyone, if you want to search Keeping Up Appearances or my name, it'll come up with all of those songs that we used and a few others. About an hour's worth of fitness there for you.
What's your favourite song on your Spotify playlist?
Let's Get Physical.
Oh, good. Yeah,
bit of Olivia on there.
Headband?
Yeah,
You got the haircut for the physical? No.
No.
So just coming up to questions in a minute. So if you've got any burning questions, please start thinking about them now and don't be shy. I am interested, going back to Table for Eight, and you were saying how That was a challenging novel to write, or not so much write, but you learnt a lot. You learnt a lot about that. Can you share some of the learnings with us?
The characters were more complex, so I found I had to dig a bit deeper, and that's why I talk about now getting to know them and working out what it is that's important to them, what they would do, what they would never do. I didn't know that so well when I was writing that book, so I've learnt that I really need to do that, because, you can get halfway through the book and suddenly that character might go off on a tangent and you think, it's so out of character for them that it's not right. So that was a really good learning curve, I think, for doing that. Just made me think about them a lot more and their backgrounds and so on. There were also, I think, more characters. It was tricky to juggle because, as readers, you know what it's like. You can't have too many characters to keep your head around when you're reading a book, and so to make them unique, each one had to be unique enough so you would remember, well, who is this we're talking about now? That sort of thing was, a good learning curve for me.
And I think what you do really well is you find their edges as well. So in terms of they're not one-note characters, they've got their real strengths as good people, but they've also got, like we all have, I guess, edges to us that some people like and some people don't, and you found those edges well.
Well, present company accepted, everyone's got flaws, haven't they? So, characters in books have flaws, and even, can't remember, somebody said to me the other day that, and I can't think which character this was, but it was a character that was a bit prickly and a bit hard to like, and they said, at the end of the story, I just understood. I think it was Bryony actually. Bryony in this story. Bryony. They couldn't really get Bryony, but by the end they went, I do, and I think that's it, is to see that journey of the person that they have got flaws and they don't always get it right, but even people, not so nice people, have redeeming features. Everyone's got something. Surely you've got to look for it sometimes, but you usually find it.
Indeed, and your son has got the Port Adelaide redeeming feature, in my opinion. I'm just also interested in. I wrote this down, but I haven't asked it. As we age, what do you think we learn through life? We've got some fairly significant learnings in keeping up appearances, but going from time capsule situation as a teenager and, putting your love of, whatever pop star or singer or whatever through to, and also all of your prejudices that you carry because your parents were, prejudiced or whatever. What do you think we learn, and how do we moderate ourselves as we get older?
Very deep question.
Sorry.
Very deep question.
Would you like to lie down?
I think, I hope that we all learn as we go along, and I was, I don't know if you saw the news of that young man that's just run across Australia. He's 22, and I look at him and I think, wow, the things that physically it's a huge feat, but for a man that age, a young man that age, to do what he's done, I just think, wow, I don't know that I would have been that, worldly wise at 22. But I do hope in my 60-something years that I've learnt something along the way and learn from other people. And I think in a story, in a book, that's what happens. Characters learn from other characters, and I think in our lives we do. And the beauty of a book is we get the chance to perhaps walk in someone else's shoes for a while and to experience an idea or a view that we perhaps might not normally have, or perhaps don't even believe in, but we get that little chance of going, well, I wonder what it's like to be that person. And so I'm hoping, with age, you get a bit more wisdom about that.
And I think what you've picked up on in your story is that sometimes these crises that we go through, whether it's a family crisis or something that's happening to us that we don't particularly like happening tends to be that agent of growth and learning, because we have to learn to overcome it and move on. So,
yeah. Well, life can be tough. It's how you deal with that and how you move on, I think, is what makes us, isn't it? And
totally.
and you know, sadly, for some people, it's just too tough, and for other people, they seem to grow,
To thrive.
to thrive. Yeah.
So, what's next after this one? Are you working on something?
Yes.
already?
So next year's book is well underway.
Wow.
Not quite as far along as I wanted it to be, because usually it's finished before I come on tour with the next book, but it will be there. It's nearly there. And so we've been talking about Table for Eight. And those of you who've read it know that the main character, Ketty, goes on a cruise, and she is one of those people that likes to delve into other people's business and try and sort people out. And so I'm taking her on another journey next year. So it'll be another story with Ketty.
Oh, that's a nice little thread to end on then,
Yeah,
isn't it?
there you go.
Yes. So we're going to open it up to questions now. And if you've got a question, just pop your hand up. I think there's going to be a roving microphone coming around. So, yes, Donna.
Well, congratulations, Tricia. I think it's just amazing. And for an author with such a fabulous portfolio of work, do any of the characters that you invest so heavily in, do they travel with you? Is there one or two in particular that stay with you?
That's a good question. You know, like I think back on them a lot. It's like making friends. You know, they might not necessarily be in the room with you, but you think of them. And so, yes, I do. I think really the book that I'm obviously in, and at the moment there's this one, which has just come out, but also the one I'm writing. So there's this sort of huge field of characters at the moment in my head. But I think the ones that I'm with at the moment, it's a bit like asking to choose between your children. I just say the one I'm standing closest to, you know. But I do particularly like Marion in this story, and I just think she's an interesting woman, and you know, if I could pluck her out of the story and make her real, you know, she'd be a character I'd like to spend some time with, I think. The closest I've come to it is one of my historical books. We had a book launch in Hawker, which is on the edge of the Flinders Ranges in South Australia, and it was set in that region. And it was run by the local Isolated Children's and Parents Association group, and they had all dressed up in period costume. It was lovely. They'd done beautiful decorations, and they asked me to go out onto it was just getting dusk, and we went out onto the veranda to have drinks and nibbles to start. And they said, oh, you know, just look out there. And like out there was dirt and then some bushes in the distance. And then I realised there was something moving, and I could see this sort of white. And I just get goosebumps when I think about it, because it was two people on horseback coming out of the bushes, riding towards me, and it was the two, Joseph and his wife in that story. And they were dressed as them, but it was just like they'd come to life. It was just so beautiful. And this young couple had horses, and they'd dressed up and come specially for the dinner. It was just really, really special. So that's the closest I've come to really meeting my characters, but other than that, they're just still in my head. Thank you.
I think that's the definition of success, isn't it? When people are prepared to go that far for
very
characters.
Special. Yeah.
There's a question here. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Tricia. That was very interesting. I'm really interested in the fact that you write across 3 different genres, and so I'm wondering if you actually jump year to year or whether you've done it in a consolidated fashion, and and the second part is, do you have a preference for a genre? I know you write more in one than another, but do you have a secret love? So
the rural romances were where I started, and then because of our connection to the Flinders Ranges, it's a very spiritual place, and I do understand its importance to the local people there, and I always felt it when I went, that there was a story here. And so I used to jot notes my publisher took the rural romances, and I didn't think to mention that I'd partly written historical in the cupboard until one day we were chatting, and she said to me, I'd like to read that. So I gave it to her, and those 3 historicals sort of came in between the rural romances. And then I made the change to the more general fiction. And yeah, I like them all. I can't, but it's just, as I said earlier, it's just the time factor. And I don't think I'd be very good at jumping between them, you know, so it was quite difficult when I was writing rural romance and trying to finish the historicals in between. That was, you know, I had 2 books out a year, and that was, yeah, I couldn't keep that up. It was pretty tricky. So yeah, I like all of them, and if I could clone myself, I would be happily writing in all 3 genres still, yeah. And who knows, I never say never, so I could go back to writing the other at some stage.
I'm an audiobook listener. Do you get to select who narrates the books?
Yes, now. Well, no, I should say I always have had, but with the first time one of my books was made into an audiobook, I was sent 3 little sound grabs from 3 different narrators, and I had to pick from that which one. Because, you know, the narrator, if you're an audiobook listener, the narrator is very important to the story, isn't it? Because if it doesn't match, you don't want to listen. So, and that worked out well, luckily. And then with a book, a couple of books ago, I'm not sure how many, I got the chance to change because the narrator wasn't available or whatever, and I got to work with Casey Withers, who I love reading my books. She's just perfect. And she did quite a few. She's a young woman who just has such a range of voices and talent. I just really liked her work. Unfortunately, with this book, she wasn't available to do it. And so I had to start again, and I was like, oh. But this time I was sent 2 quite much longer pieces, and they were reading my book. So I got to hear the narrator reading my story rather than someone else's story, which is, you know, a bit tricky really, because they might have a whole different thing for someone else. So yes, so I do get to make that. It's a narrow choice, but I do get to choose. Yeah, thank you.
And do they do every character?
Yes, I'm listening to Keeping Up Appearances at the moment as I drive around, and just Rebecca McCauley is the narrator, and she's doing a fantastic job. And just like there's quite a young character, Levi, who's only 3, and you know, sometimes people can do those, you know, sort of baby voices, and you think, oh, that sounds terrible. She just sounds like a 3-year-old. It's just perfect. She does a really good job. So yeah, you know, she's great.
Did you have a choice with her as well? So she was...
Yes, there was one other, I can't remember the other person, but I got both sound pieces, and they were reading a piece from this story. So yeah, excellent. It was hard. Either of them would have done a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got a good one though.
Yes.
Any other questions? Oh, Donna.
I can question endlessly, so I'll just park it after this. But it's a question to your process. Now, you said that, you just have to write a bit every day, and you make it sound so effortless. But as, you know, with all these books under your belt, what is a little bit every day? What does the process look like for you?
Yes, it was different when I was working full-time and writing in between. So then I gave up full-time work to write full-time, and I think I mentioned I'm a procrastinator. So, you know, I suddenly had the tidiest cupboards in the street. I had, you know, the towels all hanging nicely on the line. I had the garden weeded, and I wasn't getting any writing done. So then I had to rethink, how am I doing this? So for me, what I decided was I just get myself organised in the morning as if I'm going out to work. So, you know, it's whatever jobs you do in the morning, you know, you have your breakfast, you get ready, hang out a load of washing, whatever it is, and then I go to work. So between 8 and 8:30 each morning, I go to work, and my aim, when I'm in that first draft phase, is to write 2,000 words a day. I don't always achieve it, and sometimes it comes by lunchtime, and other times I can be there at the end of the day and I still haven't got there. So but it just means, you know, the next day I might have to write more, or I have to do something else. If I'm a little bit stuck, I find I need to go off and, you know, let the creative juices just flow a little bit more. So that might mean a walk or just doing something completely different, but then I have to come back to it. I can't just give up. So, you know, it's just discipline really to get that first draft. I know I sound, but it is. You can make all sorts of excuses, and that's what Fiona said to me. You can make all sorts of excuses, but the only person who can get the job done is you, so you have to do it. And I'm better at that now, yeah. Still hard work, but I'm better at it.
Anyone else? No?
Questions?
I'm curious because I feel like I almost marry the authors that I like to read, because, you know, you take them to bed and you read, and, you know, you think, how's this person come up with these unbelievable ideas? So situate us in your writing space. What's it look like?
So my writing space is 2 steps from the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I have an office space, which is, I have one corner of it, which is has a big whiteboard over the top as a perpetual calendar, and I use that. That's a good visual for me, because I've worked out how many words I have to write, and so I cross them off. So they're on my calendar, and I cross them off as I go, so that's a good visual. It's also got things on it that might stop me from writing, like a family holiday or something. So they're blotted out.
Okay.
And then, you know, there's touring, that's put in another spot. So, you know, it's all very visual. So that's on the wall. I've got all of the things that I need for writing all around me. Behind me, I've got my husband's really messy desk. He never uses it. He just dumps things on it. So that's, you know, behind me. I try not to look at that. If I ever have to do Zoom, which of course we had to do a lot of in the last couple of years, I actually have to turn my screen and everything right around in an awkward angle so that you can just see the bookshelf behind me. Otherwise you'd be looking at all his rubbish, you know, that's there. And then the other end of it, there's a couch where my 2 assistants are usually lodged, and that's my 2 cats.
Yes.
And they just spend their day moving from one spot on the couch to the other. They're very helpful.
Yes.
And so it's just a nice light room.
Yeah,
and
light.
I don't play music or have, especially in that first draft phase, I don't have any sound. So, you know, sometimes my husband's retired now and he's pretty good at keeping away, but every now and again, you know, he
Gets a bit bored
sticks his head in
wanders
and
in.
See you later.
And you have to smile as if you were happy to see him at that point.
Yeah. But, you know, he's good. He does the cooking for us, and he does lots of other things.
Makes cups of tea, does he?
No, I do that. But he cooks and does other things, so that's good.
Lovely. And just one last, any last questions you've been burning to ask? And
I'm terrified.
I've just given, I mean, this is an awesome book, and the way you weave, so that we've got a beautiful thread about keeping up appearances, which I think we can all, it's a human truth. I mean, we all think about that, you know, what do you think of me? What am I wearing? What am I doing? So we've got that, but we've also got the complexity of really well-rounded characters and the way Tricia weaves it all together to bring it to a resolution that we can all connect with. So that's, it's an amazing story, and obviously Torquay Books are sitting at the back waiting to fill your handbags and hands with.
And it's not too early to stock up for Christmas.
It's Christmas time coming, people. We're all going to be rushing around, so buy many. And also, I just wanted to know, have you got a title for your next book? Can you give us a scoop?
Look, I can give you the title. It might not
Transpire
because sometimes they change. But in my you know, I always have to have a title, even if it's a working title, and so it's A Cabin for Two.
A cabin for two, lovely. So, yeah, you probably need to get table for 8 as well so that you can get on to the next one. So I'm just going to wrap up, and excuse me for reading, but I would never remember all of this. So I want to say thank you for such a lovely conversation and for sharing all of your tips and tricks as well for us writers. Also need to let you know tonight's event has been recorded with all the faux pas, so that's always good because it makes it a little bit more interesting for the viewer. We don't mind that because that's just human stuff. So if you'd like to watch or listen to the discussion again or show friends and family, it's going to be uploaded to the library's YouTube channel within the next couple of days. And obviously we've got lovely Lynn from Torquay Books down the back with a nice array of Tricia's books, selling them, and you can purchase a copy and Tricia will sign them before you leave.
And you get a sausage roll recipe.
And you get a sausage roll recipe, so that's even better. And, you know, maybe that's good content for your social media. Everyone's sending in their sausage roll pictures.
I have had the first person send me a picture of the sausage rolls made with the recipe and the book tucked up behind.
Oh, you need to make a
I
competition.
was drooling.
And also, Keeping Up Appearances obviously is available to borrow from Geelong Regional Libraries in hard copy, ebook and audiobook. So please, thank you everybody for coming along tonight and suffering through my my long-winded questions. But also on behalf of Geelong Regional Libraries, we hope to see you again, and we'd like to thank Tricia as well again.
Thank you.